What's that number one, I guess, if you had to say, if you're going to do one thing right when it comes to scrapes, what would that one thing be?
Yeah, I think it's patience is the big thing, and you have to set your ego aside. If you're shifting around in the tree, standing up every 20 minutes, or cutting hunts short because you're uncomfortable, your saddle is costing you opportunities. That's why many hunters choose buzzard roost saddles. They're 100% USA made and built for serious time in the tree. The new Reloaded saddle features a proprietary design that distributes weight evenly and reduces pressure points, making short sits comfortable and all-day rut hunts realistic. Comfort equals patience. Patience is what kills mature bucks. If you want to try one in person, come by our store, Revive Outdoors in Trussville, Alabama. We've got a full tree demo set up so you can clip in and you can feel the difference before you buy. Get comfortable, stay longer, hunt smarter. Buzzard Roost saddles. If you're missing turkeys or barely putting pellets in the kill zone, it's probably not your aim. It's your choke and shell combo. Not all choke tubes perform the same, and not every shot shell pairs well with your specific shotgun. The wrong combo can absolutely wreck your pattern past 30 yards. That's why I run TrueLock choke tubes. They're a multi-generational, family-owned company that specializes in choke design. In fact, several factory stock chokes are made by TrueLock as the manufacturer's choice. Every single spring, I see those Facebook posts asking what choke and what shell combo to run, and the answers are absolutely all over the place. If you want a data-driven, range day proven setup built for your specific gun, call TrueLock. Their number is 1-800-293-9402. Tell them the specific shotgun you have, and they'll match you with the right choke and shot shell combo. Pattern it once, hunt with confidence all season. I never expected a peaceful hunt to turn tense. One morning in the woods, I ran into a convicted and violent felon that was poaching on our property. Just like that, a calm day completely shifted. Thankfully, I do carry every day, and thankfully I did not have to defend my life. I was able to verbally de-escalate the situation, but here's really what hit me after. Even when you are doing everything legally and you are in the right, you can still face legal consequences if something goes wrong. Up until that moment, I really had never thought about any kind of legal protection for lawful self-defense. But now I made a point to go into USA Go and get USA Go Pro Shield self-defense legal protection. If you are a responsible gun owner, you need to think beyond the gear and the training. Learn more at usago.org and use code REVIVE to save 10% off and get your free welcome gifts. Be prepared legally and responsibly. What's up, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Revive Outdoors podcast. If you are joining us for the second time, we appreciate you coming back. Don't know why they came back, Jad, but they did. And so we are excited to talk about today deer biology and mock scrapes. If you did not see the first episode, go back and watch it. It tells you a little bit about who we are at Revive Outdoors if you're not familiar, but it also talks about 3 postseason tactics to do right meow. Right now. And so you want to go back and listen to that because it's going to build into this episode of Deer Biology and Mock Scrapes. But joining me back in the studio again is Mr. Jad, like Chad with the J.
That's
Welcome
right.
back.
Hey, everybody.
Unfortunately, Justin wasn't able to make it today, and so we have a stand-in for him. Looks just like him. If you know Justin, he looks very similar to Wes. We have Wes in the house with us. He's 6'6", 215 pounds, has a draw length the size of Texas. So welcome.
Happy to be here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to get started. It's going to be a great episode, and we are going to talk about a lot of good things. But a little bit of recap. Let's talk about the masterclass. So, Wes, you came, you helped us set up like a boss. I appreciate that, but unfortunately, family took you away. So that just left me and Jad there as also people who are here on the show today to kind of recap it for everyone. And the big thing is we had a great turnout, and we had a lot of people there that they walked away not just better deer hunters, but better people. And we had one salvation. So amazing to see that someone accepted Jesus Christ as their personal Lord and Savior. That made every bit of the event worth it to me. We had incredible weather, and we had incredible speakers. So we are going to have those speakers get on the podcast. We're also going to launch a online option for that master class that you're going to have the opportunity to partake in if you weren't able to attend it in person. So that is going to be amazing. And the biggest thing for everything that we teach, I'm really wanting to gear it towards what most people fall into category wise and that's the weekend warriors,
That's right.
the people who work Monday through Friday and get to hunt, the weekends, or maybe just one day in a weekend, or maybe you just take off occasionally. How do we maximize the odds of your experience to get on big deer? And sometimes that means not hunting. Sometimes it means you don't go to that perfect spot you think that you have because the wind's not right. And so we want to take all of you that have as minimal time as possible. We want to take all of this information and try to tailor it to you, because the more time you have, the more experience you gain, the more you can take and apply this stuff, the more mistakes you can make. But for those guys that have limited time, we want to provide this information to make you the most effective. But Jad, what did you, before we go too deep, what did you think about the master class? What was your big takeaway?
It was all really good, but I think my biggest takeaway was speaking with Zachary New from Native Sense. He a plethora of knowledge, but what really stood out to me most was him talking about the gestation periods. Um, he's talking about the 21 days. If those does are bred that first go around, 21 days later they're coming in and getting bred that second go around.
If they don't get bred,
they don't get bred the first go around. That's right. And then he also, what he speak about, if those first timers, they get bred that second go around, that's what they always do. Isn't that what he said?
Yeah. So basically, when a doe comes into their etrus cycle, when they are bred, effectively, impregnated at that point in time, they will come into that same etrus cycle every single time, as long as they're bred every single time.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, your buck to doe ratio might be off, and a buck doesn't get to her in that etrus cycle, then she will 21 days later go right back into etrus. So that's why you see, especially in Alabama, it's really crazy. You'll see these ruts that are lasting all the way up until turkey season. And it's because these does are going without being bred because there's not enough bucks to get to all of them.
Right. So, yeah, you talking about the weekend hunter, not having much time. I think that'd be just take some of that native scent and just spray on yourself. Didn't you have an occurrence, something like that?
Yeah,
Taylor?
yeah. So back when native scents first came out years ago, I was up in Virginia hunting. So it was the rut there. It's in November, and I took this. I've never used real doe etrus,
Yeah.
and that was like his main product. Now he has the buck and rut. He has the normal deer urine, the doe urine that we'll talk about. But the big thing then was just etrus, and I had never used it for any reason. So I didn't really know what to do. And so hopefully we're going to continue to provide more content on what to do with this native sense and actually go through this in this episode. But when you don't know, you just kind of guess. And so I started out with the scent wicks, and then I'm like, well, you know what? That really worked. I put that on there, and every buck in this area came to it today. I'm going to ground hunt tomorrow, and I'm going to spray the top of my beanie, top of my hat,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm going to spray my feet as I walk in because, man, they'll walk right to me, and I'll get them. So I sit there all day. I don't ever reapply it because I can smell it the whole time, and it stinks. And I saw some deer, but nothing really valuable. And then on my walk out, it's this long gravel road at this one property I was hunting that day, and the road almost goes all the way to the back. And so I'm walking up to my truck, and you crunching in the gravel, and then I would stop, and it's like am I being stalked? There's no mountain lions up there that I'm aware of. Facebook groups and people will tell you otherwise, but I'm walking, and it's like I hear like a predator would do, like stalking you. I look back, and at this time I didn't have all the gear that I have now. So I had a headlamp that didn't do too well. And I'm just walking along, and I hear it again. I kind of look back, nothing, and I'm like, okay, let me find that flashlight because I'm getting kind of
It's starting to get weird.
I'm starting
now.
to get some chills on my back. I'm starting to sweat. And back then it was before I coyote hunted. I used to be really, really scared of the dark, but now I've coyote hunted. I see that they're terrified of people. Bobcats are too, and there's not really anything else out there to get us in Alabama. And but I used to be terrified of the dark. And so I'm starting to build up sweat. I'm getting those chill bumps, and I'm like hearing it's like getting closer, but it's like am I imagining this?
Yeah.
And I am. I take that flashlight, and it is so bright, and I pull it out of my pocket, and I turn around, and from like me to Wes,
Oh, wow.
like a few feet away, this little 8-point buck's just standing there, like that's really bright. But he's like not running away, and I'm like, get away, like
Yeah.
it scared me. I screamed like,
Yeah.
like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
get away. And so finally I get him, I like start throwing like little limbs and rocks from the gravel at him. And he finally runs down and gets about 80 yards. And I'm like, oh my word, like this
Guy's confused.
guy's wild. And I'm like, oh, I sprayed that stuff on my hat and my feet. Because, I hunted all day. Not that I forgot, but I'm not thinking it's that good of stuff. That joker followed me all the way to the truck.
Yeah.
He just kept running back up to me and running back up to me. And
That is crazy.
it was a scary situation, but funny now that I look back at it. That dude was trying to get him some action in the wrong place.
Right.
And all I had was a bow on me. I didn't have a pistol. I didn't have any way to defend myself.
That was my
really.
next question.
So you don't suggest spraying this stuff on yourself anymore?
I don't know. Depends. You want to kill that really aroused 2.5, 3.5-year-old that doesn't really know what's going on. If that's what kind of buck you want, maybe you should.
Become self-defense
point blank.
at that point.
That's exactly right. And so, but yeah, I think the stuff works. But biggest takeaway for me on the masterclass was really Wes Moyer, which I can't wait to get him on the podcast. Just an incredible mind. His whole topic was really about thinking outside the box. And so Wes has the Wolf Pack, which is a group of guys that there's only 7 of them, I think.
Yeah, he said 7.
And they're not accepting applications.
No,
we found out.
I asked.
Yeah, it's locked in. And we got to wait on somebody to die. It's kind of like those systems that you get in employment wise, and you're just like the National Guards like that. You know, if you're at a guard base in the military, you know what I'm talking about. You're just waiting on that dude to die or retire. At he's 65 or whatever. But but yeah. He talks about, coming in with the wolf pack, and they go to public land pieces and they hunt all across the state, and the strategy that they use as a team. And, they'll put some guys upwind, some guys downwind. They'll enter from different ways to push deer, to get deer coming to them, to put them into pinch points, and just how they work as an organism and as a team is really unique. And that was really amazing. And I don't want to go into too much detail just because I want to really save that for the podcast. But in another instance, he was talking about what he does personally each year. He does some kind of experiment to see if it works. And so this year he bought the cheapest Walmart trail cameras that you can get, and he put them in places where he was trying to see if it would redirect a deer, basically as like a fence, like an invisible fence that would push deer back to him onto his property and not going to the neighbors where they kill everything that walks. And he says it works. He said it works.
Interesting.
And so he's always doing something, thinking outside the box, trying different experiments, and what I like is it challenges me to think outside the box and just come at things with a little bit different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But that was really the biggest thing for me taken away from the master class. But I don't want to go too deep into this before we have a chance for Wes to introduce himself. Wes, why don't you tell a little bit of your hunting background, how you got connected with Revive, and then kind of what you're looking forward to in this podcast.
Absolutely. And thanks again for the invite, Taylor. Means a lot. I would say the story, I never get tired of telling the story. I feel like I've shared this story maybe, 58 and a half times. And it does slightly change, just like any good story over time. But really just the story of how I got involved in hunting goes back really 25, maybe 26 years. Really good friend of mine. We're still friends to this day. And I'll share a story with you, which would make you probably question why we're still friends. But in any event, so he invites me to his place down in Montgomery, Alabama. And he says, "Hey, Wes, you ever hunted deer before?" "No, I've eaten tons of deer, but I've never hunted. I don't really think that's for me. Do you see what I look like? He says, "Well, no, it's just come, just have a good time, right?" And long story short, after about I'd say 8 attempts, he gets me down to his quote unquote hunting camp, which ends up being a palatial cabin in the middle of the woods. And he puts me in a deer stand, and 5 minutes, maybe 7 minutes in the deer stand, I see a spike walk out. Now, we didn't talk rules. We didn't talk don't shoot, shoot. We didn't talk size. We didn't talk anything. He said, if you see a deer, shoot it. So that's what I did. And I put my first deer on the ground. It was a spike, and I was hooked, right? And every weekend after that, I was there hunting, looking for deer to kill and harvest, right? Because I enjoy eating deer. My family enjoys eating deer meat. I grew up eating it, and just the thrill of hunting is something that I can't describe. All of you listening on this podcast, you understand what I'm talking about, but um, that's really where the journey started. And I would really consider myself, and used to consider myself, a Hollywood hunter. I would go in a nice heated shooting house and just wait for the deer to come out. Never really had to worry about tactics, never really had to worry about woodsmanship, all these things that Revive really focuses on. So you fast forward, lots of hunting, even got into elk hunting, which took me out west. And notice I didn't say elk killing, I said elk hunting. But in any event, just enjoy being out in the woods, always have. And my wife and I were in Colorado, got the opportunity to move back to Birmingham, and even beyond that, found out that we would be living in in a city, Trussville, Alabama. Didn't really know a whole lot about it. My wife walks into his toy store, which coincidentally is owned by Taylor and his wife, Kelsey. And that's where this Revive journey started for me personally, because things just started to happen after that point. And I got connected with the group and just really found out a lot about myself from a spiritual standpoint. Made lifelong friends, Taylor, Jad, many others in the group, just outstanding, outstanding people. And along the way, learned how and continue to learn how to be a better hunter, right? And even just as recent, learned about turkey hunting, which is a whole nother podcast and a half, maybe. But just long story short, I really uh, have grown as an individual. I've grown as a hunter. I've grown as a seeker of knowledge when it comes to hunting, and just the love and the passion has grown quite a bit. Because what happens with the hunting community is you find out that the more you learn, the more you start to um, realize how much you have to learn, if that makes sense, right? It's just kind of
Absolutely.
interesting. The more questions you ask and the more things you read, the more you realize, I don't know as much as I thought I knew. And it's just a beautiful journey, in my opinion. So happy to be a part of the group, and love what you're doing, love what we're doing, and love what the group represents.
Yeah, man, we're glad to have you a part. I think it's crazy that we met, and somehow I convinced you to go out in the woods with a couple of guys and turkey hunt, and then also drive across the country 20 something hours to Nebraska to hunt. That was a trip. That was a trip right there.
It was the drive. I like to call it the drive that never ended
Yes.
until it did, right? Because I think we were 2 hours away for 18 hours,
Oh,
right?
really?
Just always
Yes.
felt like we were 2 hours away, but we finally got there, and it was just a blast.
Yeah, it's like off the interstate was like what, 4 to 6 hours,
Yes,
and then
yes.
like the gas station was 2 hours away or something. It was, I think, when we actually figured out where we were, the last gas station we had saw was 2 hours. And then the once we figured out kind of where we were, if we went kind of to the north, it was still like an hour and 10 minutes to the gas
Oh, wow.
station.
He didn't have to ride with you, did he?
No, I didn't do that
I'd say I
too.
don't know how he would
Yeah, we all drove
unfold him.
separately. I convinced everybody to drive separately, and I think they all appreciated that.
Well, the reason I
They,
say that, I don't know how he could fit in the Maverick.
That's
well, that brings up a good point, Jad. I remember that story, a little something like this. We may all remember it differently, but I remember asking the group, "Hey, I'm going to drive my EV out there, and I think we'll be good. I may be a little late, guys, but I'll get there." And I remember some side conversations going like, "Man, are you crazy? Do you realize where we're going to be?" Just so long story short, I ended up renting a truck, making the smart move.
Awesome.
But
yeah.
we did get there, and we actually got on some nice bucks. We didn't get a chance to pull on anything, but just a wonderful opportunity, and Taylor had some great success. But just happy I was able to be a part of that
Yeah.
story.
Yep. And then turkey hunt. You had an incredible first turkey hunt.
I did. I
Yeah.
did. It was one of those hunts that you'll always keep in your back pocket from a memory perspective, because we were sitting there for a while, and this is probably um, the second or third spot where we were, right? And then Taylor tells Rob and I, okay, it's kind of a slow. We think we know they're here, but let's just walk back to the truck. And sure enough, we look down. I say we. Taylor looks down and sees the cross track of the turkey, and all of a sudden, now we go from essentially going back to the truck to leave to now we're in pursuit, and it all happened within maybe 10 minutes. Taylor's calling, I'm sitting. Taylor's calling, I'm sitting. I'm looking. Taylor's calling. Then he stops, and then we hear tracks. Right. Yep. That's it. That's it. And I don't remember all of the details, right?
Yeah, conveniently.
But I will say this: Rob remembers. He said Rob saw two head. I saw two head, and in my recollection, there was just so much brush and so many trees, and it was just a thicket between me and these turkeys,
Mm-hmm.
which is why I didn't shoot. I was waiting for the proper lane, right?
Thicket equals one
And-
twig.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right.
With the shotgun.
Looking back on it, yes, that was essentially it. But I had my chance. I didn't take the chance. But you know what? I walked away a better hunter, knowing what I didn't know then about projectiles and how turkey hunting differs from shotgun hunting, actually differs from rifle hunting, respectively. So
Yeah, yep. And now we're gonna have to be careful. I've ragged him so much about not pulling the trigger. We're gonna have to be careful that he doesn't pull it too soon. You know, a hen pops its head over the hump, and he's,
Yeah, that's right.
you know,
isn't that the rite of passage, though? Turkey hunting.
Yeah,
I feel
yeah.
like that's the rite of passage. then you become a little bit more selective.
Well, we
I'll
don't kill
say.
the hen at least. Let's kill a jake or something on accident, but not a hen. We're going to jail for that one. So
Fair.
yeah. So yeah, just a great time. I'm glad to have you on the team. Definitely God's hand in it all, and you definitely make a difference. It's a blessing. But yeah, I'm excited. Today's content is going to be incredible. It is my favorite way to hunt is understanding their biology and understanding why mock scrapes work specifically on public and private land. And you can use them on public and private land no matter where you go, and you're going to have success. You can't use bait, you can't always use cameras, but mock scrapes, you can put those down anywhere in any state that I'm aware of. If somebody knows otherwise, let us know, because we need to know that. But when it comes to putting down these mock scrapes, I really want to start by talking about like deer behavior versus human thinking, you know, like a deer's thinking versus human thinking, because you really have to put yourself in the brain of that deer. You know, how do they survive on a day in and day out basis? How do we think that we need to hunt them versus how they think about surviving? And a lot of times we teach them how to survive, unfortunately. Like we have the same patterns, we do the same thing, we think we're a step ahead, and they're watching us walk by going down the road to our tree stand, or they're sitting downwind and waiting to smell us, and you know, they pattern us really quick. And then I really, you know, the myth of, you know, they went nocturnal, like, oh, all my deer are nocturnal right now. No, you or someone has applied pressure to them, and they've just become smarter. So the idea is that they've disappeared, right? They've gone nocturnal. They're not there anymore. We've pushed them off property, and really, deer adapt. You know, that's the big thing, is they adapt to our hunting pressure. And I have a theory that if you're still getting a buck on camera every single time that you come and go, or like when you're not there, they're coming in, uh, it's the deer. My theory is that deer is usually, unless the season has changed, like the time of the season has changed, that deer is going to still be in a kind of about a 100-acre radius of where you're at. Now, there's exceptions to that. On public land, they might push a little bit deeper, but on private land, they're usually sitting pretty close to where you're getting that picture of them. And a lot of times people think that they're moving miles, and not to say that they don't, but in my experience, that deer from the photo, if you're getting them regular, are staying within a 100-acre radius. And so that's why last week's episode is so important to go back and listen to, because it's going to teach you how to scout that 100-acre radius and then create the ultimate stand placement location to be successful next season. And so I have a saying, it's deer are not in a hurry to die, so do not be in a hurry to hunt them. And what I mean by that is it's twofold. Say you wake up late, you overslept a little, you're driving across to your hunting spot or taking a four-wheeler side by side through the woods at a hunting club, and you're trying to hurry over to your spot to beat the deer there, or whatever you think mentally is going on. You're putting all this pressure when really you can slow down, you can ease into that stand, maybe you can kind of spot and stalk your hunt in, and just really take your time. But that hurrying, they hear noises that they're not used to hearing. They hear a chain on a four-wheeler, or they hear a limb breaking where you hit a tree too hard, or that gate throws open a little harder than it typically does. And so there's that aspect of don't be in a hurry, and then there's also the aspect of, like, you get a big buck on camera that you've never seen before. You don't know why it's there, but it's there, and it's in
Yeah.
daylight, and you're like, I'm going to hunt tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And it's so easy to do that. I mean, I get excited if I have a buck that pops up out of nowhere. I'm like, I'm going to hunt today. That's the only motivation is I just see him and I'm going to go hunt him. And in reality, he already knows your pressure's been in there. He smelled you. You go hunt, you don't see him. And then the entire rest of the season, you're playing this cat and mouse game where the deer shows up. Maybe you hunted in the weekend. So by Wednesday, Thursday, the pressure settled down, the scent's dispersed enough. That buck feels like coming back in there. Maybe he comes back in there at 4:30 before dark. And you're like, okay, he's daylighting again. And then so what are you going to do? You're going to go right back to that stand. You're going to go down that same exact road. You're going to do the same exact thing, and you're going to expect him to show up. And you're doing that, and he's sitting there on the ridge where you come in the gate, and he's like, huh, there's
Yeah.
Jad again.
So you're talking about the deer pattern you. This happened last year to you on the brow time buck.
Yes, yes. Yeah, not necessarily to me, to the guy that I was sending over
That's
there,
right.
but it was my fault. I'm the one that was telling him how to go in and do what he was doing. And initially, the deer was coming and going from a different direction, so really easy to pop in from the edge I was directing him to. But understanding wind and thermals is big, which we have a whole episode on that I always point people back to. But that spot, what it would do is the wind would push what I thought was the scent back away from where it was coming from, but it would kind of settle off to the right, get in this bottom, and then swirl and kind of push around.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that this deer was coming across, he was coming across. If you're in the blind that we set up, he's coming across from the far left. So imagine like a northwest corner, if north is straight out from the blind. So a northwest corner, and he's kind of moving, to the east side. Well, then he transitioned to coming to the southeast side, running up a funnel and going right over a saddle and hitting a bunch of rubs, and then going down into that next bottom. Well, that next bottom is where those thermals were settling.
Mm-hmm.
And then the wind was just churning and stirring all in there. And then he's like, uh-oh, something's in here that I don't want to smell.
Yeah, he was in perfect position.
That's exactly
He had drop
right.
pegged.
So this was after just a couple of hunts. So every time he would hunt, and he hunted multiple days in a row, multiple days period, and every time he'd hunt, the buck would show up right after he left. It didn't matter if it was noon. It didn't matter if it was right after dark. It didn't matter what time. Or the buck would be in there early, and he would sleep in. We'd get a picture of him. I'm like, oh, didn't slept in. That buck would have beat us anyways, because he could hear the gravel popping. He could hear and see from where he was bedding during the day, the entry path. And so what we tried to do, and we call this buck the brow tine buck because he had crazy brow tines. He got poached this year, which we talked about last episode. But he set up his bedding to where he could watch, and he could see, and he could smell and hear. So all three senses he could use to accomplish survival. And he would just sit us out and wait. And then he realized that we were applying pressure to one section of the property. So then he started going and feeding on the other section while it was still daylight. And then so we tried to hunt him over there. And I'm like, you know what? I'm getting sick of this deer not dying. I am going to figure out what he's doing. So I've kind of, I talk about like color code and like shading a map of where you've hunted and where you haven't. And every time you've come in, from the time you touch that property to the time you leave, if you just shade a big wide path, you start to color code. And you can do this with the hunting club where other people hunt.
Yeah.
You shade it, and wherever it's unshaded, that's where the deer are going to be. And so if you can figure out where to get into that unshaded spot at the right time, go in, you can take that deer. So what we did, we came in from a complete different direction, parked the truck away, and we eased in and we bumped that deer off of his bed, and he went south. And so, well, that let me know where his secondary hideout was right on the front edge of the property. And so I came in and I was just really wanting to film him this day because he was a cool buck, but I really wanted another person to get him. And so I decided I'm going to park off property on another side, and I'm going to come up the steep cliff, and I'm going to just ease in after it's rained. Come in, I sit down. Within 10 minutes, he walks down, hits a scrape, and then he walks back and beds down. And this was the only spot on the entire property that wasn't shaded. It wasn't burnt or wasn't,
Right.
No scent had been dispersed. And guess what? He was there. And so it's just so many times the deer, and just so we're clear, that deer was within 100 to 200 yards of the two stand locations that we were hunting. But he had the advantage because we had just left scent there, and he was able to pattern us really easy. And an old mature buck like that's 6.5 to 7.5 plus years old, it doesn't take them long to figure that out. That's why I always say the best hunt's the first hunt.
Right. Y'all had another occurrence
Mm.
where something like that happened, where two of you walked in, you figured this deer was watching you, and then one of you walked back out,
Yep.
letting the deer know.
Yeah,
that,
we've done that a lot. Or we take a vehicle in, we go by a bait pile,
Yeah.
and then, they think we're dumping bait. Sometimes we just go ahead and dump some,
Yeah.
and then we leave a hunter there and we go out. A lot of outfitters will do this. Now, your mature bucks, it's hard to convince them. The younger deer
Yeah.
are a little bit easier. But yeah, you just go in, go back out, and leave somebody there, and they think you're gone for the day.
Right.
And boom, there you go. But let's go ahead and transition into the specifics of the deer biology. So you have the eyes, the ears, and the nose. From a deer's eyes, just so everyone that's watching understands, the eyes are going to be about 20 times better than our eyesight at last light and first light. So that first and last hour of the day, their eyes are made to thrive. That's why a lot of times you're going to see movement during that time. At full sun and even at full darkness, their eyes are not as great as what they are at first and last light. And then their ears are much more enhanced than our hearing, and they are directional. So they can pinpoint where it comes from. They can dissect it. They can hear it further away. So they're going to know if you cling something on metal, you open the gate, you pop that gravel, you make any kind of noise that is not normal to them, even the pace of your footsteps. I think about okay, two-legged animals are turkeys. If you got turkeys in that area, I'm going to try to walk like a turkey through the woods, like 1, 2, 3, scuff some leaves, 1, 2, 3, scuff some leaves, pause for 10 minutes, scuff around in the leaf. I'm trying to do something that mimics something they hear. If I want to move fast, like if I'm getting close to my stand, I know there might be deer around, I need to get there and get up the tree fast, or I need to sit down quick. I will actually skip or trot over to where I want to set up. So it sounds almost like deer running. And so there's things that you can do to when you know that they have that potential of hearing you, at least try to sound like an animal. So recently, and I'll put this video up, but recently I went out to a spot and it was a really loud day. Leaves were really loud. And so I did that hopping and skipping, and I knew it was the rut. So I was trying to really force my toes into the ground to just really stomp and sound like a mature buck coming through there. And I get behind this tree and I'm almost to the spot, and I hear something exactly what just sounded like I was doing running towards me. I'm like, what is that? And this little buck comes up 10 yards from me. And I'm like, man, you have no idea, how close you are to dying.
I do have a question, Taylor. Did you have native scents on?
I did not. I did not that day. I had the wind in my face, so I didn't really have any reason to that day. But yeah, it was that was a cool experience, and it just kind of validated when you try to sound like nature, whatever that looks like. It could be a squirrel. It could be, really anything. But that's in nature. If you can mimic it, you're gonna win.
Yeah.
And then the nose
The nose,
is
that's their main defense, isn't it?
main one. And so they are going to smell about 500, it's estimated 500 to 1,000 times more than what we smell. And so you have, there's a whole scent control episode we did that really dissects this a little deeper. But on the biology side, they live and die off their nose. Like that is their main thing. So they have 7 glands on their body that takes their nose and allows them to communicate and use it through nature. So the 7 glands, I'll kind of start from the top and work my way down. So the top is the forehead gland. So that's where you see, like in mature bucks, they'll stain a little bit more. And so they'll have that staining on their forehead. They use that to rub against trees and get their aroma and really show their dominance. And then they have a gland right on the inner side of their eye. It kind of makes a little waxy substance there. Some people say it makes a difference on, licking branches and stuff, but there's nothing really proven that shows that. And then they have their nasal gland, which a lot of people think that is to do with scent receptors. But my understanding is that it's just really to wet their nose, keep it moist, because the moisture supposedly enhances their ability to smell.
It
So
cleans their palate,
yeah,
basically.
and it clears it. It allows them to really dissect what they're smelling. So if they get a little bit of a whiff of you, you'll notice they'll put that head up and try to directionally point their nose where it needs to go, and they'll start to lick their nose and just really clear out what they're currently smelling to really dissect what it is that they smell of you. And then on the front of their hoofs, and it is called the interdigital scent. If you spread their hoofs apart on the front 2 hoofs, they have a scent gland there, and it smells kind of like a cottage cheese.
Yeah, it's very strong.
Yeah, and a lot of dog trackers, like when you wound a deer, they put out that hurt scent, and that's how these tracking dogs track. So if you shoot a deer, you don't see it fall, you're not really sure on the shot, back out, because they're leaving that scent. And when you follow that track, even if you're getting a little bit of blood, if you go off that track a little bit left, a little bit right, much less grid search it, you're just taking that interdigital scent and you're spreading it out all over the place. And so what you're doing is you're confusing that dog on what the direction is that deer went. So like when I got shot that deer in Nebraska. When we were out there, Wes, I tracked it about, I don't know, 40, 50 yards. I hit the property line, but I went in and out on that track, and then I dove off perpendicular, and I marked where I dove off so I could tell the dog tracker, hey, if the dog goes off that way, don't follow it. Let it stay straight, or direct it to stay straight. And then they have a gland at the tip of their penis. And so a lot of theory behind that is as they start to come into rut, testosterone rises, they really start to process things different. Some people say there's something that, that impacts. Some people say there's not, but they're going to be putting out more scent and more testosterone, more dominance anyways. And so there's that. And then there's a metatarsal, which is on the outside of their legs, that there's some theories around that, but overall, they don't believe that whitetails really use it at all. And then you have the tarsal gland, which is on the inside of their legs, which most everybody knows is kind of the main thing that turns really dark red. I did kill a buck this year that it's like he didn't even use his tarsal glands. It was really strange, but for the most part, they pee on these tarsal glands. They rub their legs together. They really get that down in the scrapes. And so those are the 7 glands, and how they use those to survive, to really maximize their communication, breeding, and then you have the nose. So the nasal receptors, there's millions of these receptors in their nose, so they have the ability to dissect things at a completely different level, which is why I get winded sometimes, and so does everybody else.
You talking about that nose, though. I heard something last year. I think it's Zachary New spoke about the nose. He was talking about how, it's 5 times stronger than ours, but the deer also can differentiate. I can't even say that. They can smell those different smells. Like he said, kind of like a stew. Yeah, we can smell the stew cooking, but the deer could actually smell each individual ingredient. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, that is so true. And I think a good example, story time, is this buck I chased back when I was hunting in Virginia. We called him Dewdrop. And so Dewdrop, and you can see the picture here for those that are watching on video. He was a 200+ inch deer with 2 drop tines that were like 12 to 16 inches long. just a monster of a deer. When I saw him coming through the woods, I thought it was honestly a deer that had got into something,
Hmm.
like a vine or bush or something that got it on its head and
You wasn't
couldn't
sure
get
what
it
you were
off.
seeing.
Yeah, I couldn't. You can't even imagine one what a 200-inch deer looks like, much less one with those kind of massive drop tines
Yeah.
and just that massive rack. But I had came in that morning, and what we're going to talk about is I use historical data, and using that historical data, I knew when he would be in there the next year. So I come back in there. Well, I didn't know that the top ridge that wasn't our property, they had cut over, and then they had pushed some of those trees down that hill onto our property. And so when I went in there to cut across this side, to come in with with the wind in my face, to come in with the thermals rising at the right time, and really make a bulletproof setup, I couldn't get to my stand or the tree I wanted to get in where these two really big dominant scrapes were, because the trees were in the way. So I had to dip down closer into the bottom, and then I had to come into it. Well, it's kind of gray light, and I'm trying to orient myself with where I'm at. And I honestly, I look down and I'm standing in the scrape.
Oh no.
And I'm like, oh no. So I take a stick and I try to mess it around, and I like, there's a scrape there, there's a scrape here, maybe you'll come to the first one. And so I get up in the tree, thermals are rising. Occasionally my scent would kind of push down and kind of settle at that second scrape. Like I kept dropping milkweed, and I'm like, oh man, I've stepped in that scrape. My scent's kind of settling around that
Yeah.
second scrape. Dear Lord, let him come in on the first one. And so he comes in exactly how I imagined in my head, except for I'm in the middle of peeing.
Ooh.
Yep, yep.
Mm.
So I'm in the middle of peeing, and I am also holding up my phone down in this bottom, trying to get service because I'm trying to Venmo my wife money because the bank canceled our debit cards. And they thought that we're traveling to Virginia, and we live in Alabama now, and it's like
Yeah.
they think it's fraud, and so she's blowing me up. I have no service, and I hear what I thought was a limb break, but it was this buck pawing the ground, working that first scrape. And so I'd like, okay, I'm like trying to put my phone back, I can't put it back. Of course, it's hard. And then meanwhile, I'm just letting everything hang out. At this point, it is what it
Yeah,
is,
that's right.
So I go for the muzzle loader. I go to put it on his shoulder, and he starts to move to the second. Well, in between the first and the second, there's all these really thick hollies, and I can't get a shot. And he gets to that second, and his whole body jolts.
So
Like,
this is the one you were standing in.
yes.
Okay, the second scrape.
Yes, unfortunately. And his whole body jolts, and he bounds back about 3 or 4 further into the bottom, and he looks around and he starts licking his nose, trying to figure out what he's like. I've never smelled this before.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on? And he runs a little further. I had a little bit of a small softball size hole to shoot through, and I should have took the shot. But I had a muzzleloader malfunction in that same spot the year before on another buck. And so I didn't take the shot. I thought that he was going to work around, but instead he turns and he goes the opposite direction, and he blows the loudest, strongest, deepest blow all the way out of there. And needless to say, I didn't get him. The neighbor ended up getting him, which I'm happy for him. But when it hit that nose, it was
Yeah.
like red alert, countdown to death. I'm out of here. Gotta run. And so it's just amazing how their nose works. And this year I had a buck that was bedded up on a ridge. Uh, the wind was blowing in my face, but there was a couple of times when the wind would settle and the thermals would pull down into this little bitty creek drainage. I mean, it's stream drainage, no
Yeah.
water in it. There's just a little V. And that buck fed all the way down to it. And he got within about 20 yards of it, and he caught my scent right up the hill. I mean, he was gone out of there. It's just that's the thing is there's so many times we call it the invisible bumps, is we bump deer with our scent without even knowing because we're not paying attention to the wind and thermals, which I knew. I had been dropping milkweed. I knew if that buck ever made it far enough down, he was going to win me. He's a 2.5-year-old. I don't care.
And they know where those spots are.
Yeah, they do.
They know.
They're feeding to check before they ascend up or cross that trail or go into that next saddle. So it's it's really their nose is everything.
So talking about their nose is everything. I think we ought to move into mock scrapes.
Ooh, okay.
That's something I'm interested in this year. It's starting now, like you spoke last week, using mock scrapes. So that's something I'm gonna try this year. It's and trying to learn, picking the right location, where to start. Where would you start?
Yeah, I think it's really good to start this conversation. What I call is mock scrape fails.
Hmm.
And so everybody, emotionally buys native scents, and it works. Don't get me wrong. You put doetrus, raw, pure doetrus in a bottle and you spray it, and you're going to have bucks coming in. I tell people if you are spraying it in front of your stand, you better be hunting immediately. Like, don't spray it and then go across the property and hunt somewhere else because you're going to get a trail camera picture of a buck in most cases. If you can go into a spot, you can spray it and they're not going to wind you before they wind it. They're coming in, and you can get a buck.
Yeah, that happened last year at that master class, where you were showing everybody how to do mock scrapes, and then that night a buck shows up.
Yep, yeah, and everybody was
Classic,
You remember
classic
that?
example. I remember hearing about that. I'd say, and that's one thing that has always interested me about scrapes is all the hunting I've done. It's worked in some cases, it hasn't, but we've always used buck bomb, right? Just your standard off the shelf Walmart stuff. And as I become better, more fluent in hunting, you realize there's levels to everything. But as we get into scrapes, one thing that I'd be interested in kind of hearing more about is um, public land versus private land and kind of how those strategies differ. Um, and I have some examples of where uh, you mentioned failing scrapes and kind of just some of those things. And do they really differ from private and public?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll start with the failing. And so everybody thinks it's magic in a bottle, but at the end of the day, that deer is using his nose to breed. Most people are buying this in the peak rut. He is using it to breed, but he's also using it to survive. And so if you're setting it up to where you and the scrape are going to be downwind of that buck, he's not coming in. And so I see people emotionally buy. They think that they got to go in and they buy this, and the target buck that's been showing up on camera that knows where they're at. We talked about the nocturnal buck that
Right.
Yeah.
supposedly disappeared. They're not changing anything but putting some doetrus out. That buck will come in, but he's still probably going to do it after dark when you're gone.
Yeah, right.
And or you spray it and you leave and go hunt somewhere else, and
Yeah.
then he comes in. And so you could try that. You could, spray it and go around and hunt the other side or something, and look at it that way. But the reason that it fails is because they don't really understand the tactics, and they don't understand the deer biology and how it works, and how what you're really trying to achieve is getting that scrape in there and using it for a long-term gain and not a short-term. We live in an Amazon Prime world where you can get everything delivered sometimes same day, sometimes overnight, and at worst case we get it in 2 days. Like, oh my gosh, I gotta wait
Yeah.
2 days. And so you live in an Amazon Prime culture, but deer hunting is a lifelong sport. Like,
Yeah.
it is a long marathon of a journey. And if you try to make it a sprint, you're going to get burnt out. You're going to get fed up with it. You're going to get frustrated. And so you have to pace yourself, but you have to let the deer come to you. And it's again, you don't, deer not in a hurry to die, so don't be in a hurry to kill them. And so what I see is one, they go and put out a scrape and they smell like the gravy biscuit or the sausage biscuit they had at Jack's on the way out. And so they're covered in all kinds of scent, and then they're spraying it with the bottle, all over the place. Or they're not wearing gloves, and at certain times I don't wear gloves either. It's all, if I'm putting in my mock scrape for the first time, if I'm freshening it up, there's it's situational. But really, what I would say is the biggest fail is you can't luck in. I mean, well, you can luck into a buck, but long term success is based off of understanding that biology, understanding how their nose works, and using it to your advantage. And so, on your question, Wes, of public and private, when it comes to public and private land, why I love mock scrapes is because you use the same exact strategy on both places. So what I'm going to do is, and you can't, unfortunately, in Missouri, you can't put up trail cameras on public land. And so what my big thing is gathering data through trail cameras. And so you can't do that on public land in Missouri. Maybe there's other places you can't as well. But what I hope to do is uh, go up before September 15th, I think is when Missouri season goes in. And I want to put in a mock scrape sometime between now and then in a spot where I know this big buck was hanging last year. I don't believe he got killed. And he's in a pinch point already where he beds. And so using that to where I can push that downwind, I can kind of hunt the crosswind and get on him. But the biggest thing with those is you can use mock scrapes at all times, no matter what, as far as I'm aware. And so public land, you can put them out. Private land, you can. Baiting, you can't do that.
Right.
You can bait on private some places, but you can't on public. There's other things that you can't do. You can't cut down trees and create pinch points. You know, there's a lot of things you cannot do on public. So why I love scrapes is because you can utilize them for both places, and they work both places. And so you're going to really want to initially kind of like my strategy behind the mock scrapes, as we talked about it last week when it comes to stand placement, is I'm trying to put this mock scrape. Either I find a community scrape, which a community scrape, for those that didn't watch last episode, is like the size of a car hood. It's going to be a massive scrape, the biggest scrape you've ever seen in your life, but they're rare to find. So usually you have to create these. I'm either going to put them down in a thermal hub to gather inventory where I still have cell service on my trail camera, or I'm going to put it up on a ridge where I still have service. Now, if you're on public land and you can still put out a camera, but you can't get service, just go check it every quarter. You know, put it on pictures, put some good batteries in it. You know, just let it soak. But I'm going to go in and I'm going to fresh these scrapes up every quarter. And so the actual placement of these mock scrapes that was covered in our master class. So you can log on and you can find that once we get that uploaded. We covered it a little bit last week, but the actual location is key because you want to set it up to where you have the advantage. And a lot of people set them up to where the deer have the advantage, or they find a scrape and they're like, "Oh, this is a great scrape. There's tons of sign in here." But the wind's going to swirl nonstop, and they're just never going to be able to get on that buck at any point in time. And so what I like to do is I like to put them in where I can get easy in, easy out. I can start to learn that year-round behavior. So I would go out and I would put in a mock scrape right now. I would start to gather data and I would let that thing bake. And so I'm going to go in, I'm going to freshen it up every 3 months, every quarter, and I'm going to replace my batteries while I'm in there. And I'm going to just let that thing start collecting data. And chances are, you know, you may go 6 months to a year and a half and not a single deer touches that thing. And then all of a sudden it lights on fire and you're able to take, you know, multiple bucks off of it or gather lots of intel off of that because you've continued to put DNA into the ground, into that scrape that they're coming in. And you talked about the stew earlier, they can dissect it. Well, they can dissect that there's multiple deer in that area. And so the way that pee is collected, you're getting multiple DNA into each bottle anyways, because it's on like a drain system. It all drains down and they collect it from multiple deer that are in that pen. And they are collecting it from multiple different bucks or multiple different does that are in etrus. And then you're taking that out and you're putting it into that soil and they're coming and freshening it up every quarter.
Yeah.
So
So
you're
when you
basically
say freshening it up, what are you using? Are you using the estrus? Or are you just using doe urine? Are you using buck urine?
Yep. So what I do is I put in. So I only use native scents because it's real straight out of a deer. You know, it is straight from a deer, and you know I don't use tinks or you know any kind of buck bomb stuff. I use the real stuff, and I'm going to use War Party, which is the buck. You know, at the peak of his testosterone level in the rut. I'm going to use Deception, which is a doe, just regular doe urine. And then I'm going to use Seduction, which is the doe at the peak of her etrus.
Okay.
So I'm going to take all three of those bottles and I'm going to just soak the soil with it every single time because I don't care. I'm not trying to kill a deer right then. I'm trying to use that to gather data to kill a deer later.
So would you consider a scrape to a degree kind of like a cast iron pot where you just kind of season it, and the more seasoned it becomes, the more effective it
Yes,
becomes?
that is a great great analogy. I mean, that is what you're going for. So the 12 point that I killed this year, he had been coming to that specific scrape for 3 years in a row in partnership with a doe that was going into etrus.
Mm.
And so that's what leads us perfectly into our next point on the biology and understanding the gestation periods and how they go into etrus and all of that. A doe's going to go into etrus unless she doesn't go, like we talked about earlier, unless she doesn't get bred, and then she cycles back 21 days later. But if she gets bred every single time, she's going to come into etrus in that same window. And I think Zach shared with us, which we're going to get him on the podcast for this specifically to share all this extremely important data, but like 5 to 7 day window, something like that. And so what I do is I've been sitting there watching that buck. He's come in. I've got cameras out on the field. There's a scrape on the field, so I'm looking for him and her, both hitting the scrape, and then eventually, probably getting a picture of her being chased or him running. I'm looking for that. I didn't get that this year. I got it the past 2 years, but he was a 3.5, then a 4.5, and then I killed him as a 5.5. But what I got in those is off that mock scrape. I got data of where he hit it every year around Christmas Eve to Christmas Day to the day after Christmas. Sometimes she was with him, sometimes she wasn't. And then the other camera that's out on the field, which is 100 yards away ish, 150 yards away, I had that camera the past 2 seasons be hit by him coming to check that scrape. I didn't get that this year, but I got him on the one down in the thicket, which it's in a thermal hub. I do have a little bit of service. Batteries die on it pretty quick, but it's easy in, easy out for me. And also I can sit there and wait for the right time. And so he came in, he hit it in October, the first cold front, November, the first cold front, December, the first cold front, and then Christmas Eve, he came in, he hit it. I could tell like his behavior wasn't quite there, like she probably wasn't ready yet. And then he came in 2, 3 days later. She was there with him. He was there. He lets out this big, long, loud grunt, and then he does a snort wheeze because obviously there was probably another buck off camera that I couldn't see. And that's when I know he's locked on her. I'm going to kill him in the morning. Yep. And so that's 3 years worth of data that I've collected and maybe 8 to 12 pictures total.
Wow.
Like that's not a lot in most people's minds, but that's enough to give me what I need to know for the future history of that deer. No, it's really you're playing that long-term game to really just generate that inventory and be able to go in and get those deer.
So you've talked about having success yourself over these mock scrapes, and then we had a guy last year speak about he had success using mock scrapes for the first time.
Yeah, and this year.
And this year, okay. So do you know, Wes, have you ever had?
No, I tell you
done
what,
this?
Jed. As I'm listening, I'm thinking to myself, I want to be part of this story for next deer season because there's a couple of areas that I hunt that typically have stands, right? Where you know where you're going to, you know where you're going to set up, but more importantly, the deer know where you're going to be sitting. They know where you're going to be setting up. So as I become a better hunter, mature in my journey, I want to take some of these tactics and implement them this coming deer season, right? And really gain that advantage that we're talking about here. So we shared, obviously, we know that you have tremendous amounts of success, Taylor, all around the country using mock scrapes. But I do know there's a couple of guys on the team that just are starting down that path that I think, to your point, had some success over this last season and killed maybe in some cases their first big buck. And I think that as you continue to kind of have success, would you could you make the argument that you almost use that exclusively, or that's a big part of a good hunting strategy going into an area where you know there's a big buck and you want to just put yourself in the best position to get that buck?
Yes, 100%. I rely on that heavily. It's not. I'm a big person that I try not to speak or hunt in absolutes. Like this deer is always going to do this, or deer as a whole always do that.
Sure.
I try not to because they're wild animals. They each have their own personality, like we do. But I'm heavily relying on the data that these mock scrapes provide me to be able to go and hunt. So if I wouldn't have killed that 12 point this year, I know now because I put out more cameras in the area and I have other mock scrapes that are decently close by that he hit other mock scrapes the same time he hit this mock scrape, but he hit the other ones in daylight because it was a little further from the road, a little further from pressure, and deep back in the woods. But he hit the same ones in daylight as he hit at nighttime at that first cold front in October, first one in November, first of December, and then obviously went back to that main one looking for that doe in late December. And so it's just creating more data points for me to go and hunt. And so his was all driven off of breeding. And so why I like to really focus on it, and I will say it's a repeatable process that anybody can take and duplicate, is because you are feeding off of their two primary ways of living and breeding. And so their nose is their number one tool for survival and for breeding. And then you're partnering it with the time of the etrus cycle to be able to go in and know that he's going to be locked down 1000% sure. If that doe's still alive and you don't kill her or somebody else doesn't kill her, he's going to be back in that area in the same 5 to 7 day window the next year. And so all you've got to do is plan your vacation around that, plan a stand location that's good for you, find those pinch points. We talked about it a lot more in the last episode, but find the stand placement that's best for you and be ready. And so I use other things, but this is the most repeatable. So we have Charlie, who has been to all three of our master classes we've had so far. And he took the information from the first time he attended to the next season, and he killed his first like big rack buck off of a scrape immediately, like I think in October. And so sometimes you go in, and the curiosity aspect of these deer, like who is in our territory, you'll have like he had a whole bachelor group coming to the cameras or coming to the scrapes on his cameras, and he's like, dang, they're coming every day. I'm just going to go in there and hunt, put the wind in my face and go climb a tree. And he had success. And then this year, he comes back to the master class because, like you said earlier, it's like what I love about hunting, it being a lifelong sport. You never can learn enough. I learn something every single time I talk to somebody, whether they're very minimally experienced or they have 30 years of experience. There's always something to learn. And so he came back, he learned some more, he picked up more information, he started collecting more data points and more dates and looking back at the years prior. And then he was able to tag out this year on 3 incredible bucks. And then I think his son, his child, like killed a really nice buck too this year. So I'm pretty sure they took out 4 deer, if I recall incorrectly. But either way, just an incredible season. But taking the process and actually applying it how it's supposed to be applied, which was playing the long term game. He even talks about how he had a scrape that he just remembered me preaching. Just keep going back every quarter and freshening up that scrape. Don't give up on it. Because I had that one scrape that went a year and a half untouched and then lit on fire. He had the same exact thing happen. No buck touched it, no buck touched it, no buck touched it, kills a buck off of it.
That's a good point, Taylor. And I'll say this for those that are listening that are, let's say, in their early days as really trying to create a better hunting experience for themselves as opposed to just going and sitting and waiting. I'll call it kind of the old school thought of I'll just go climb my stand and just wait for something to come out to the field. I want to become a better hunter. I want to kill more mature bucks. What's that number one, I guess, if you had to say, if you're going to do one thing right when it comes to scrapes, what would that one thing be?
Yeah, I think it's patience is the big thing, and you have to set your ego aside. When everybody else is posting pictures of big bucks that they're killing, and you're committed to this process, and people that maybe aren't even good hunters, they look up, they get a good buck, or they have an awesome season. It's like, man, this is very frustrating to sit. I've been taught, oh, let's just do this process and basically collect data and wait. It's not fun. My
Mm.
first year, maybe 2 seasons of doing this method and really dialing it in, I didn't kill a buck in Alabama.
Oh, wow.
And that was hard. I mean, very hard. But I didn't have anything big enough, and I didn't have enough knowledge on anything that I really wanted to pressure. And so I think the patience is going to be the big thing, is because you're going to maybe see deer coming in but you haven't had time to scout and go in and figure out how they're coming in. And so you go in that first time, you think you're coming in clean, wind to your face, you bump them right out of the bed that they're sitting downwind of the spot from. It's like you got to be patient and be willing to let these deer walk. And yeah, you're risking that the neighbor kills them. You're always risking that somebody else in the hunting club kills them. But if you kill them, they're definitely not going to get any bigger. And I'm not saying like you got to trophy buck hunt and you got to kill these big bucks. Like you do whatever makes you happy. But if your goals are to kill more mature deer, you have to one, let the young ones walk to be able to get bigger ones. And then you have to collect more data before you go in. So patience in hunting, a lot of people look at it, and I used to do this. Patience is going to sit this one stand for like that 5 or 7 days that I talked about in Etris during the rut every year and not moving all day for 5 to 7 days and just staying, locked in, not being on your phone and just waiting for that buck to show up. And I did that for several years, like 3, 4 years. And I just got to the point where it's like, I am wasting so much time. And I want to go in when I feel like my odds are the highest. And so it took backing off, not hunting, even what I historically had as some of the best hunting dates for a specific property or specific farm, and really saying, okay, like, well, January 6th has always been our best day to hunt. I'm going to go hunt. Well, then it changed to the 24th. This buck comes in. He's breeding a doe on Christmas Day out in the middle of the field, and I'm getting a call like, hey, where you at? Can you come and shoot this deer? It's like, I saw this deer reading the spot over where you hunt. It's like, okay, so you got to be willing to be patient. And because a lot of times you got to let this plan just really develop and really get to understand this deer. And the bonus to me is that I'm letting them age. They're getting bigger and more mature and harder to hunt. So the challenge is increasing. And so I think really it's like deer just ruined and pushed off properties and just overloaded a lot of times because of impatience. You get that one daylight photo and it just fuels you. And don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. I mean, I've been there. I still got to catch myself sometimes. Like, oh, he's in there today. He's in there today. I'm going this afternoon, and I still do it sometimes.
Right.
But you got to be doing it with the plan and the data telling you to do it, not
Right.
just off of emotion.
That's so tough, right? Because I think just by nature we're impatient as human beings, especially if you're out of state hunting, right? And you only have a small window of time to be in the woods.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, out of state is a whole different ball game. Like that's what really taught me how uh, to be aggressive when I need to be and understanding all the seasons. So you got, early season, they're on a bed to food pattern. You got pre rut, they're on their feet a little bit more, hitting these scrapes and trying to kind of prep for receptive does. Then you have the rut where they're just running around like madmen, which I personally, like I don't like to hunt the rut out of state. Just because like they're not predictable. I could find a buck today and he's 2 miles to the west the next day, and so it's really a hard way to hunt out of state, especially when you're on limited time. And so I love that I can just focus on deer hunting and think about nothing else for 3, 4 days in a row. I've done up to 7. Just I can't stay away from my family that long anymore. But the biggest thing about hunting out of state is you can put all of your hunting knowledge to the test without any distractions.
Mm.
Your wife's not trying to get you to come home early. Your kids aren't sick, and this is going on. Your
Right.
work's not calling because they know you're on vacation. And like, no matter what, I'm here for 4 days straight, and I'm
Focused.
like, my goal in that 4 days is to kill a good buck
Hmm.
no matter what it takes. So it might mean that I'm driving, I get on one public piece and I'm just not finding what I thought I was going to find. Like I thought it was planted in ag. I get there and it's CRP and I can't walk through it. I seen some deer. Like one property I went to had deer all over it, but I couldn't see them. I got up in the highest tree I could possibly get in. I'm looking down into this high grass CRP stuff and I don't see a deer the whole time. I'm walking out and it's like right after dark, and I don't have a headlamp on. I don't like putting my headlamp on unless I have to. And all of a sudden, I see something jump out like right in front of me. So I put the headlamp on. It's this doe. She's like, I'm like, dude, I was just looking over this grass. Like, where did you come from? So it might take that I drive, an hour and a half another direction to get on a different piece that has ag or that is easier to read, or it does have a better deer population. And so I'm just so dialed in when I go out of state that I really encourage other guys to do it for the experience, because you don't have any worry of messing up a deer either. You're only there for 4 days. Go give it your all. If you mess something up, like, it's not like on your private land or your hunting club where you're worried about pushing it, because next week the neighbor's going to kill it. If you push it and somebody kills it, you don't even know if it's dead or not. You don't
Yeah.
know what happens after you leave. But it gives you the ability to go in knowing the time of year of that specific region of the country, knowing the time of year it is on a pattern, early season, pre-rut, in the rut, secondary rut. They have all these names, late season. You can go in and put your knowledge and experience to the test. And that's why, like, there's the one spot I went to in October, they were still in that, like, kind of early season, just coming in the pre-rut. If I go put that mock scrape out now, I know I will kill this deer. He will repeat the same behavior.
Yeah.
He was the dominant buck in the area.
Mhm.
He's comfortable where he's at. Like, he thinks he has a lot of pressure, but he's figured out where to avoid that pressure. And I caught a glimpse of that, a very fortunate glimpse. And so now I know where to go, what to do, when to do it. I just got to get up there and make that mock scrape and hope he's still alive.
Right. Good point.
Are there any questions that y'all have more on this topic? I think that would be good for people to see.
I would say when we went hunting, Taylor, this was maybe what early part of January, maybe latter part of January. And I remember going into the property, and specifically you said, Wes, these are the days that we need to be out there. And I remember, now that I'm hearing and learning more about it, I'm the data suggests that you're out there during that specific time. Would you say those days are best suited for all day sits, when you know that's the day that historically tells you that you need to be in the woods? Or would you suggest, for someone who may be limited on time, do you dial it into a morning sit, an afternoon sit, a midday sit? Because just thinking through that, the thought process would lend itself to sitting out there all day, giving yourself the best opportunity. But maybe that's the wrong way to look at it.
Yeah, so I think the answer to this is kind of it's situational. It's kind of twofold. And so all day sits, you have to have a perfect wind and thermal set up the entirety of the day. And so the stand that I sat you in, you can do that as long as the wind is blowing out of the northeast above 7 miles an hour. And so as long as it is consistent wind, you don't have any of that, like the wind settles and it kind of pushes back into that little dip kind of in front of you. As long as that consistent wind stays there and the thermals are pushing up and then they settle down into the valley back behind you, yeah, you're risking that those deer are back there. But the hope is that they're in front of you. So that would be an all day stand, all day sit, spot. That would be something that you could go in and you could do it. This is why last week I talked about I sat that stand, maybe 7 times, which is very, very high for me.
Yeah.
Like, I hunted the other spot across the way 2 times. And so the weather and the wind and thermals are going to be big. And then you've got to be willing to go to a spot and even climb a tree, set up your stick, set up your platform, your saddle. You've got to be willing to go to that spot, be sitting there dropping milkweed, looking at the forecast, and it's telling you one thing, and that milkweed starts going another. You've got to be willing to get out of there, because you are wasting your time. Like, so that's what I would say when it comes to just spots in general. Like, if the wind is not going, your scent is where that milkweed's going is not where you want it to do or be. It's not going where you want it to go. You've got to be willing to say, I am moving. And it could mean you move 50 yards to the other side of the oak tree and you push your scent down into a different valley where you think the deer are not going to be. And so that's the one side of it. And then the other side of your question is, like, if I'm trying to figure out when to take off work, if I'm going to hunt morning or evening, that's where you're really going to rely on that trail camera intel over the years, or you sat in a tree and you've seen something that time of year and you've locked it. It's really that historical data is going to tell you when you need to. But I tell guys, if it's your first year hunting a spot, like you've never been in there before, you don't have a lot of intel, you're trying to decide when to take off work, I would just say go. If it's the rut, especially, just be in the woods because anything can happen at any point in time. Like it could be completely dead, and 30 seconds later, you've got 7 bucks chasing a doe and trying to. One's got her on lockdown, and the other ones are running crazy all around it. Like it can change, and so stay as long as you can, hunt as much as you can, is what I tell people. So like you may see me, like the second buck that I killed this year, it is a 7 point, big wide 7 point. That buck, I literally put out corn in refresh camera batteries all day or all morning for the mentored hunt that was happening. Dropped my dogs off at the groomers, and I went to that spot to replace the battery. I had seen a buck that evening. I was like, hey, I wonder if he's got this doe on lockdown. Sure enough, he was there. I killed that deer.
Boom.
I load him back up. I go get the dogs from the groomers. Actually, I put my jacket over him. I like trying to get as much scent as possible so the coyotes don't come get him. So I go back. I get the dogs from the groomer, and then I go back and get the buck. And unfortunately, that was a rough recovery by myself. Had to use tow straps and all kinds of stuff to winch him out of there because it was the day that we had a big cell phone outage. I couldn't call anybody for help, and yeah, I didn't want to leave him for that long. But yeah, that was wild because it was just another example of like, you collect all this data, you collect all this information. What you'll start to do is you'll start to develop this like killer instinct, and it's something that can't be taught. But some of the biggest buck killers out there, they know when they're gonna kill. Like you just get this like almost like out of body experience feeling like I've got to go today. And that's why when I tell people like, hey, can you hunt in the morning? I'll go through like 7 or 8 guys on the team, and I'll be texting, hey, can you hunt in the morning? Can you hunt in the morning? It's like 9 o'clock at night. They think I'm crazy. I'm like, can you hunt in the morning? Can you go then? It's
You just
because
know.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I think we've all received a few of those random text messages from Taylor over time. But to your point, most of those end with a big buck on the ground. Most of those days, and it's just so interesting. You mentioned the nose, and you know that instinctively, but in that situation you were talking about earlier, where the big buck walked into the scrape that you just happened to be dancing in for a little while, and then he's hit that scrape, ran, just bolted. Try to rattle him back, try to grunt him back in. Just a thought there. What would you, if you could go back in time?
Yep. So what I had attempted to do is the coloring of the chart again. And so what my strategy was and he gave himself away. He gave his exit route away because he blew the entire time. And so he went straight across. He got to the bottom of the other ridge on the other side. He hung a left and he blew all the way out that. And that goes up 2 ridges. It goes up an off property and up and hits the corner of our property and then goes to the neighbors where he ended up dying 4 days later. So he gave me away. He gave away he gave me the secrets, the keys to the kingdom. So what I did is I'm like, well, it's already blown out for the day. I'm going to go into the swampy bottom where he's at, and I'm just going to follow the trails and get the sign and collect the data that I've never been able to collect because it's always been freezing cold down in there. That day it was 75 degrees. I don't care if I get wet. I'm already hot. Like if I get my boots filled with water or whatever, I'm just going to go out in that swamp. So at some points I'm swimming across. I have my muzzle loader up above my head. I'm wading across. I'm literally soaked. But I was able to get in there. I see exactly how they use that swamp. I found a tree I could come in on dry land and climb up for the next year. And I found this crazy island of rubs that was only about the size of a coffee table, like a big coffee table, a big circle, like about a car size hood, or car hood size. And you have all these bedding in it, and then you have all these rubs around it. And so I was like, man, there's a big buck in here. Like you could just tell by the nature of the rubs, the strength of them, how deep they cut into the bark. And so I get out into the middle of that and I find that, and I'm like, well, we do have this 150-inch 10 point that roams around out here. And I know he's been in this area because he's the one I had a muzzle loader malfunction on last year when he was a big 8. I like, maybe I can call him in. So I stand up on this island, and he's heard me slosh around and all this, I'm sure. But at the same time, I was trying to sound like a deer as I went and did all of that. So I heard that other buck go through the swamp and blow, but I also heard how he sounded as he ran across. So I kind of mimic that. I get out there in the middle, I do a doe bleat, and I do a tendon grunt, and I hear the woods turn into what sounds like the biggest buck ever running to me. But he started running to me, then he turned and went to my left, and what he was doing is he was finding his entry trail to it, and then he started, just kaplushing through the water.
Yeah.
Boom, kapsh, kapsh. I can't make that sound. I gave it my best try. But literally runs up, stops broadside 10 yards away. I shoot my muzzleloader. I've got my stand on my back, and I'm literally like crouched down, like I call it an Afghani squat, like the men in the Afghan dresses. Like I got an Afghani squat going on, and I shoot that muzzleloader, and it kicks so hard it blows me back into the water, puts me underwater, and I'm actually trapped, like fighting for my life. And like I had to get the straps undone and come up, like I'm like, well, this will be a way to die. I've got a 150-inch 10-point on the ground, and they find me and it dead in the swamp together. And I was like, well, there's worse ways to go. But yeah, that was so. What I did with that buck is I kill that 150. We get it out of the swamp. The landowners were like, hey, you saw this other buck. You've already killed this nice one. It's like the biggest buck ever killed on property. We're actually going to keep hunting, and you've killed a good buck for the year. Have a good day. Basically, I was devastated. I would have never killed that 10-point. I would honestly let that deer walk to still have a chance at the 200-inch deer. But I didn't know that was the rules I was playing by. So they kicked me off the property. But the next day, my plan was to move over to where that deer had 2 exit points and just pick the one that was on our property and hope for the best. Well, that's where the guy killed it, a few days later.
Wow.
And so that's a rare circumstance where he gave me the keys to the kingdom. He let me know his exit route. Um, but in an instance where they blow you out and you don't know what's going on, it's really going to be dependent on the personality of that deer. But a lot of times when they do that deep, hard blow, you're not seeing them in there again.
Forget about it.
Yeah. But at the same time, people have done it, and 10 minutes later, a doe brings them back through, and they kill them right there. So it's all situational. There's no real definitive answer, but use whatever you can get out of that mistake and maximize it to your advantage.
That's a great point. The whole silver lining idea, right? There's always something to learn.
Yes, yeah. So an hour later, I kill a 150-inch deer.
Right.
I'm pumped. It's on my wall. Didn't kill the one I wanted, but I'm not complaining.
Well, you almost died doing it. So
Yeah,
it was
that's
fun,
exactly right. Yep. Jad, you're going to take this and implement it this year. Any more questions from you as you go to do it?
Well, I think I mentioned earlier about a location. You mentioned try to choose a thermal hub area and go ahead and, naturally you want to find where deer's already using pretty regular. You don't want to just walk in the wood aimlessly and just make a mock scrape and think it's really just going to work. So that's what I'm looking for, right? Is just go in there and find some natural travel areas, and then just try to find the thermal hub area and make this mock scrape.
Yeah, so I'm trying to set this mock scrape up in the area that's best for me to hunt it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's usually a ridge top, and it's usually an easy in, easy out area. So that's going to be priority number one.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't feel like I can obtain that, or I already find a good area that's a thermal hub down in a bottom, then I'll put that scrape. But priority number one would be having it on a ridge where I can come in. I'll look at the predominant wind for that area at the time I'm wanting to hunt it. Say, you've had a big buck on camera this year, of one in an area, go back and just start that 100-acre scout we talked about last week.
Yeah.
You scout 100 acres circumference, figure out how they're using that property. And if you find any pinch points, mark everything.
Yeah.
And then start to figure out, okay, where's the best place for me to put this scrape to hunt it? And if there's not one, then you got to put it down in like a bottom of a thermal hub where they're just the curiosity aspect's going to get them to come into
Mm-hmm.
it. But ideally, you put it on the ridge top, top third or the top of a ridge where you can kind of hunt off the edges of it and be able to go in. But yeah, I think Uh, priorities top, secondaries bottom. I usually don't put them in between unless it's just like right at the perfect pinch point. But the wind will get a little swirly. I call it the thermal hub and wind sandwich. Wind's
Yeah.
coming off, thermals are rising. It'll kind of push the wind around sideways, so it's just going to disperse your scent a little bit more. And I don't like that. I like to try to be in control of where my scent's going, and so that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah. That definitely helps me get started because I'm in a hunting club, so but I know some areas that guys never go into because we've turned into the bougie hunters, the
Heated hunting
the
house
the
guys.
heated hunting houses, the green fields, and that's going to help me because I took some other stuff away from the master class about using those hunters, knowing deer, patterning those hunters. I can use those hunters to my advantage. Is what I'm going to use that tactic and these areas I know nobody's going in, and there's several places where it got some habitat diversity we spoke about.
Yep.
So we got pines, some thickets, and some not so thick feed areas. So looking forward to doing that.
Yep. And the rain we got yesterday, if you ever can go in the day after it rained and you can cut tracks,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it's not too long after season's ended, you cut a big giant buck track. There's no doubting a giant buck track.
Yeah.
It'll be the biggest track you've ever seen in your life that you'll even second guess that it's a deer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And so
I've seen that.
Yeah, if you can cut that, even across a muddy road where people don't
Yeah.
hunt, then you're already ahead of the game in your scouting.
Yeah, so we got a lot of significant rain last night. So tomorrow is my day.
Yep,
I'm heading down tomorrow.
that's right.
So I'm holding Taylor to this. This better work.
I'm holding you to doing it.
That's right. I got to get out of the shooting house myself, huh?
That's good. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, especially when it's cold.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Well, keep your phone on you. I'll probably call you. I'll probably have more questions.
Yeah,
as
that's
this
right.
develops.
Yeah, but
Looking forward to hearing that story, Jeff.
That's right.
Yeah.
I hope I have
the
one.
success story. You can be our
That's
guest
right.
speaker for the success story.
That's right.
Next masterclass season. So, but if anybody watching this, if you have any questions, please comment that, send us an email, go onto our website, reviveoutdoors.org, hit the contact form, email us, info@reviveoutdoors.org. We want to hear what you have to ask. We want your input into these videos. Next week, we're turning the gears. We are excited. Turkey season is here and upon us. And Jad, he killed his first turkey last year. It doesn't matter that it was a decoy.
That's right.
He got it down and
Fooled a lot of people.
And then Wes this year, he's going to pull the trigger. Not too early.
Not
We're
too
going to
early.
clearly identify it, but
That's right.
we're going to get him his first turkey. But we are diving into turkey content. So next week, we're going to go back to our meeting with Dave Owens. We're going to talk about all the specific tips and strategies that he gave us on opening week of turkey season, how to maximize your success in opening week, both on public land, private land, in your state or out of state. This is going to be some crucial information that you are going to want to hear. And we are going to just have a really, really good time talking about that. If there's anything specific in our store, so we're launching our store March 14th. If you are close to Trustful, you want to drive, we are going to have a turkey grand-ish opening. So it's going to be a grand opening for turkey season. We're going to have calls there. We're going to have call tutorials. We're going to have calling contests. We're going to have experts there talking about hunting tactics for turkeys. You can get all your gear. So March 14th, we would love to have you at our new store in Trustful, Alabama. And then if there is anything that you see on our website or any gear that's out there that you would like to see us review on our YouTube channel here, we are all about the gear. So we have gear season coming up. But if you want to see some turkey gear, let us know some videos you want to see on that. But if you want to see any of the deer gear, that's why we call it gear season, GEER. Any of the gear that you want to see for deer season, saddle hunting, anything along those lines, let us know. We'd be happy to get that content out to you. But Wes, why don't you go ahead and just close us out in prayer?
Absolutely. Dear God, we ask that you just continue to watch over us, and we're just so thankful for all the things that you allow us to do, just the oxygen you give us to breathe, and just the ability to do what we love to do, and the ability to talk about what we love to talk about, and just the ability to help others, right? Inspire others, and just be a vessel for your good works. We just ask that you keep your hand on us, and just watch over all of us and our families as we just continue down this journey called life, and just do your best, and just allow us to do our best to be a beacon of light, and just help others, and watch over those that need your help and need your guidance. These things we ask in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Hey, just remember, God can revive your life through the outdoors so you can make both a positive and an eternal impact right where you are at. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.